Hello and welcome to another tutorial. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make jungle in the style of Sherelle, inspired by her tracks Jungle Teknah, 160 Down the A406, Get Out of My Head, and Rhythm Love Feel It. The project file, samples, and presets are available for a small contribution in the description. If you find this video informative, then please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. I've recently released a brand new breakbeat pack entitled Hardcore Continuum, and this includes breaks in the style of Sherelle and others. It's linked in the description. Our BPM is 160, which is the tempo of all of the inspiration tracks. Our key is sort of B minor, but since the rave chords are being transposed, some of the notes in these chords are probably not in the scale, which is something you'll regularly hear in rave-influenced music. First, we have the kick, and this is a 909-inspired kick, similar to what Sherelle favors. It's playing a 4-to-the-floor pattern, which isn't all that common in jungle. Then we have the drums group. Within the drums, we have two separate breaks, think and control, and Sherelle uses both of these in Jungle Teknah. You could also go for a more footwork-inspired vibe like she does in Get Out of My Head and Rhythm Love, although I've gone for breaks for obvious reasons. This is just the think break. I'll solo these one by one. The element I'd pick out here is the think reverbed kick, which is a different sample to the one I used for the raw kick, and I'm using it like an impact. I don't think Sherelle uses this technique, but the think kick I chose for this project didn't have as much of a reverb tail as the one she uses in Jungle Teknah, so I added it back using another sample and reverb. Then we have the control break. Sherelle uses the control break in both Jungle Teknah and 160 Down the A406, so I thought it was important to include in the project. On the breaks group, we have drum bus. Then there's EQ and a utility monoing below 500 Hz. Next, we have the high perks. The rim hits are almost punctuating the beat, though they're subtle when heard in a mix. Then we have the closed and open hats. And finally the crash, which is a fill. The closed hats work well with the breaks to help thicken the beat and make the drums feel like one instrument. This MPC groove is applied to everything in the drums group, although I haven't applied it very heavily. This is because I didn't want to swing the kick, which is playing a very straight pattern, and I didn't want the rest of the drums to clash with the kick rhythms. On the drums group, we have saturator, and then we have this parallel processing rack. So we have a clean channel, glue compressor, and isotope vinyl. Then we have an EQ, which is removing subsonic frequencies. Reverb is applied via Sende. And I've chosen the empty club preset for this project. Next, we have the 808, which is playing this very simple pattern. This is a sample. There's an EQ on the channel, plus sidechain compression of just the lows via the kick using this rack, which I've used in previous videos. reverb is applied via A. Next, we have the FX and melodic elements. Let's start with the effects. And here we have the noise effects and a riser. So for the noise effects, here I've used the sim loop sample, and this is running into a low pass filter with its cutoff modulated by LFO1 and drive and fat on the filter 2. In the effects, there's hyperdimension and tube distortion. For the riser, we have the J60 noise, and this is running in to a low pass filter with drive and fat, and its cutoff being modulated by LFO1, although this time the filter is sweeping up. Then we have the same setup in the effects as the previous patch. On the group, there's isotope vinyl, which is modulating pitch using the warp function, and a dubby echo. Next, we have the melodic group. First, we have these rave chords, and I've used this rave generator preset called Landlord Stab, which is actually the first preset in the plugin, or the first sample in the plugin rather. And Sherelle uses this sound in Jungle Teknah and Get Out of My Head. As I said in the intro, transposing chord samples can result in key clashes. I do this type of composition by ear, but it can be difficult to get right if you don't have decent relative pitch. Here I've used the root, third, fourth, fifth, and seventh. And within this pattern, they sounded better than using the second or the sixth, but it's always worth experimenting. You notice I've applied the groove, and this helps humanize the pattern. I've tuned the stab to a C by putting it up by 7 semitones. And this is something you want to be aware of when using RaveGen, that these are just samples, and often they aren't in C. And obviously C is the first note in the piano roll. On the channel, there's EQ. I've low passed the buzzy high end. Then we have Serum Effects with hyperdimension, phaser, and reverb. Finally, there's an echo, and I've chosen 16th notes for the rate, so this is the same dubby echo we saw on the effects group. Then we have the marimba. I've used an arpeggiator to create this jittery effect, and it's inspired by some of the granular sounding effects in Sherelle's productions, as well as the marimba she uses in 160 Down the A406. Here I've chosen this marimba sustain preset in Collision, and on the channel we have EQ, isotope vinyl, and Serum Effects with the same setup as the rave chords, plus a grain delay to introduce some granulation type effects. Finally, we have the siren. I'm using this squarish waveform, which has been unison detuned, plus the J60 noise. There's a low pass filter, which has oscillator A running into it, with its cutoff modulated by LFO1 very slightly, and there's drive and fat. In the effects, there's hyperdimension, distortion, reverb, and EQ. And on the channel, there's isotope vinyl and delay. Finally, we have the Vox effects. These were inspired by the vocals heard in 160 Down the A406. And though I don't think I've entirely nailed the vibe, it's close enough to be demonstrative. You may want to go for something a bit more soul inspired. For Vox 1, we have an auto filter, which is sweeping the frequencies around using the built-in LFO. This helps the vocal feel more dynamic, as does the auto pan modulating volume. Then we have Serum Effects with hyperdimension, phaser, and reverb, and more grain delay. Vox 2 has very similar effects, but we have an additional echo. On the FX and Melodic group, we have similar processing to what we saw on the drums, but it's generally cleaner. So we have a saturator, and then this parallel processing rack with clean glue and vinyl chains, followed by EQ. And finally, a utility, monoing everything below 500 Hz to ensure these elements are mono compatible. Reverb is applied via A. And that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it, and please leave any questions in the comments. I'll see you in the next one.